بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
If you have the ability, then please enable your cameras. Um, who read last time? Zian, you read, right?
Yeah,
And who hasn't read? Or has everyone read?
I think everyone's read at this point.
Okay. Faraz, go ahead and read. We're gonna start the new chapter. So last time we had talked about Am and Khas. And we talked about how in the Hanafi madhab, what the opinion has pretty much become as a dominant opinion, the opinion, is that even Am in the Quran is going to be qat'i, and Khas in the Quran is qat'i anyway, according to everybody. And then we talked about like that Am which has some takhsis done on it versus that Am which doesn't have takhsis done on it. And the rulings of those. By the way, I have to leave at 9 today, inshallah. So that's the plan. But the goal is to try and finish mutlaq and muqayyad because this chapter one, it's not that bad. It's pretty short. Okay, so let's try and do this. Just as a quick review, can someone give me an example of a mutlaq and an example of a muqayyad? We had done this like a couple of classes ago.
Um, like, um, like in general or from the Quran?
No, in general.
Like mutlaq would be like, for example, like if you say, like a iPhone.
Uh, that would be muqayyad. If I said phone, that would be mutlaq.
Okay.
One,
Okay.
yeah. So
Oh,
I think what we had talked about was within khas, there are two types. Like there's two ways you can become khas. One way of becoming khas is by specifying a quantity. So
mm-hmm.
say 3 phones, but 3 phones are still mutlaq. It's unconditional, it's unrestricted, it's there's no condition on it. There's no specific constraint, there's no description that narrows it down. Versus muqayyad, so to do like mutlaq means you're doing itlaq of it. Itlaq meaning you're like letting it be unrestricted, unconditional. To do muqayyad, what you're saying is you're doing qaid of it. Qaid means you're restricting it. In Urdu we say qadi, like someone who's restricted, like a prisoner. So qaid is to restrict something, which means you're putting a condition on it, you're putting some sort of a restriction on it, you're giving it a description. Um, And so that means that you're specifying something. So if I say iPhone, it's a restricted form of a phone. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So within khas we have mutlaq and muqayyad, right? Within am we don't have mutlaq and muqayyad. Am is am. Within khas it's either mutlaq or it's muqayyad. So if there's a description on it, it's going to be muqayyad. If there's no description on it, it's going to be mutlaq. Okay. So now that we've like kind of reviewed the concept as it was learned in Sheikh Farhan's book in English, now we're going to get into like sort of the more advanced concepts that are discussed in Usul al-Shashi. Let's go ahead and read Faslun fil Mutlaqi wal Muqayyadi.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. فصل في المطلق والمقيد. حكم المطلق. ذهب أصحابنا رحمهم الله إلى أن المطلق من كتاب الله تعالى إذا أمكن العمل بإطلاقه فالزيادة عليه بخبر الواحد والقياس لا يجوز.
Okay, go ahead and explain that without looking at the translation.
Just rereading it.
First of all, just like I want to make sure we're following the ibarat, the expressions. ذهب أصحابنا إلى. What does that mean?
um, I'm not sure. It seems like a figure of speech, but it's not literal. ذهب أصحابنا. So like our companions are like going to, so meaning going to like a certain opinion.
Yeah, but I mean that doesn't even translate, right? Well, like go to an opinion.
As in like,
So first of all,
for example,
what is us like ashab obviously means companions or students or something. What does it mean here?
Scholars.
You could say that, or you could just say like our people or our, yeah, I mean scholars, I guess. But who's na nun alif?
Is it referring to the Hanafis?
Yes, yeah. So our ashab, like our people, our scholars, like the book says it translated as our companions, but like that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, what do you mean our companions? I guess our people, our Hanafi people. If we're Hanafi people, we're reading this book, we're probably Hanafi, then our people, like, you know, the Hanafi people. ذهب إلى means, I mean, in English, you wouldn't say you go to an opinion, they take the opinion. They have taken the opinion. They have adopted this opinion. They have accepted it. They have, I mean, reality is they've created it, right? But like our people have accepted this opinion and they've adopted this opinion that أن المطلق من كتاب الله تعالى, meaning
um أن المطلق, that when something is mutlaq from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it's possible to act بإطلاقه.
sorry, again, just repeat what you just said.
So they've taken the opinion that, so أن المطلق, that something that is mutlaq from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is possible to act.
What does إذا mean?
Like when it is possible.
Yeah, if it is possible, right? So if it's possible, أن المطلق من كتاب الله. So if something's mutlaq in Quran, إذا أمكن العمل, if it's possible to act بإطلاقه, to treat it as mutlaq. When you have something that's mutlaq and you can act on it as mutlaq, فالزيادة عليه, then to add to it. Well, when you're adding to it, what are you doing? You're making it muqayyad, right? If I say phone, the Quran says phone, like Allah says, you know, use a phone, and then I tell you, I come in and I say, nope, Allah didn't mean phone. Allah meant iPhone, right? What are you going to tell me? Like, forget the definition for a second. Allah says phone in the Quran, and I come in and tell you, no, Allah meant iPhone. See, Allah prefers blue bubbles. What would your response be if I tell you like, hey, no, Allah meant iPhones only?
I mean, you'd have to find either, well, if you're talking about Quran, then you're adding a condition that doesn't exist, but at least
I'm
with it.
adding something that doesn't exist. Aren't you going to question me and say, Sheikh, like Allah said phones. I understand you're like iPhone, maybe you're Apple fanboy or something, but like how are you restricting this to, how are you restricting this? What gives you the right? Now you'll be more polite than that. And you'd be like, is there a hadith? Is there something in the Sunnah? Did the Prophet ﷺ preferred the manhaj of the Apple people? You know, like what's going on here? Like you're gonna ask for, like you're gonna ask that question. You're gonna be curious. You're gonna say, listen, seems like you're restricting something that Allah didn't restrict. What gives you the right to restrict? Okay, you following the idea here, right? I can't just come in and say Allah meant this. I need to have some evidence, but look at the problem here. إذا أمكن العمل بإطلاقه, if I can treat it as mutlaq, if I can treat it as just phones, فالزيادة عليه, for me to add a condition to it, for me to add something to it, بخبر الواحد, with like a hadith which is of low level, والقياسي, which is of lower level, like those things are ظني, لا يجوز, not permissible. Allah made it unrestricted and I'm coming in and restricting it? That's messed up. So this is the same idea we had in Am and Khas, okay? This is not something new. We already did this. We said if something was Khas in the Quran, we can't come in and make it Am. If something's Am in the Quran, we can't come in and make it Khas, right? Allah made it Khas. Khabar Wahid comes, Qiyas comes, something else comes. We're going to sit there and we're going to try and reconcile it. Oh, okay, maybe we're just going to completely discard the hadith. like having the wali for the nikah, right? Something like that. We're gonna say, oh yeah, we just completely do away with that. Or we're gonna find a way to reconcile it, like saying, well, the Quran said you could read anything of the Quran in prayer, but the hadith says Fatiha has to be there. Oh yeah, the Quran is referring to the fard, and the hadith is referring to the wajib. Okay, we found a solution to it. So same idea here, okay? Mutlaq and muqayyad. If something is mutlaq in the Quran, we can't make it muqayyad without, we got to reconcile it. We got to figure it out, okay? Because the Quran is going to be qat'i and khabar wahid and qiyas are dhanni, right? So far, so good? Now we're going to go through a bunch of examples. So this is the basic rule. The basic rule is Allah makes something unconditional. What gives you the right to make it conditional? Even if it's hadith, because we're like, hey, this is khabar wahid, right? It's not the same level as Quran. Okay, go ahead. وَمِثَالُهُ.
Check one question. So we're talking about this in the context of Quran being qat'i specifically, right? Because there are examples of, for example, when hadith give a word that is mutlaq, like say bid'ah, for example, but then they use other hadith to specify.
We're talking about we're talking about the Quran specifically, because remember, this entire section, like this part of the whole, like this most of the book is about Quran.
Yes. Okay.
So a khabar wahid can mess around with a khabar wahid, and the Quran can deal with Quran, and mutawatir hadith can still work with Quran, or even mashhur can be taken against Quran. But khabar wahid can't come and mess around with Quran.
Yes. Okay.
Hanafis put the Quran above everything else. Okay, go ahead.
ومثاله في قوله تعالى فاغسلوا وجوهكم فالمأمور به هو الغسل على الإطلاق فلا يزاد عليه شرط النية والترتيب والموالاة والتسمية بالخبر ولكن يعمل بالخبر على وجه لا يتغير به حكم الكتاب فيقال الغسل المطلق فرض بحكم الكتاب والنية سنة بحكم الخبر.
Okay. Allah says in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم, right? وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. There's two qira'at. One says أرجلكم, one says أرجلكم. So you have to think about which one is Hafs and which one is Shu'ba. Okay, so Allah says when you get up for prayer, this is the famous verse of wudu. What does Allah say? Allah is very, very, very simple about it, right? He says, you get up for prayer, فَغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, wash your faces. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ, wash your hands. Okay. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, wipe your head. And وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, and we'll get to the we're going to get to both recitations later, inshallah. That's a different chapter in this book. But let's just go with وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, which means you have to wash your feet, right? If it was وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ, it would mean you have to wipe your feet. But وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ means you have to wash your feet because it's mansub. The mansub is going to go with فَغْسِلُوا, right? It's not going to go with وَامْسَحُوا بِي. وَامْسَحُوا بِي, it would have been majroor. It's وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, which is mansub. So it's going to go with فَغْسِلُوا, okay? So you got to wash three things, you got to wipe one thing, yeah? Now, this is very, very mutlaq. Wash your face, wash your hands, wash your feet, wipe your head. Boom, 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 okay? But then we have, okay, وَمِثَالُ فِي قَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ ... فَالْمَأْمُورُ بِهِ هو الغسل على الإطلاق. Wash مطلقا, right? فلا يزاد عليه. There's no addition here. شرط النية, as the Hanbalis say. What do the Hanbalis say? Is it the Hanbalis? No, I think the Shafi'is say this. The Shafi'is say that you have to have an intention, okay? Maybe the Hanbalis say too, but at least the Shafi'is say you have to have intention. I don't remember what the Hanbalis say actually. But at least the Shafi'is say you have to have an intention for wudu. But the Hanafis will argue you don't need an intention. Why?
Because this verse doesn't specify that?
Because the verse doesn't specify it. Who are you to come in and add this in, right? And so the Shafis will argue, but there's a hadith that says you need intention. And the answer would be what?
Hadith can't overtake the Quran?
Yeah, so the hadith can make it sunnah. Yeah, do it, sure. But you can't make it mandatory. Okay. What tertibi? So the Shafi'is also say you have to go in the sequence. So what happens if you wash your hands and then your face and then you wash your feet and then you wipe your head? For the Shafi'is, is that proper wudu?
Not for the Shafi'is.
The Shafi'is, they no, because they require tertib. Okay. What do the Hanafis argue? No, the separator between the words is the letter waw. Okay, harfu atf. This atf is a wow. Does the wow necessitate tartib? We're going to get into this in another chapter, inshallah. For the Hanafis, the wow does not necessitate tartib. Have you guys had breakfast this morning? Anybody had breakfast? No one has had breakfast. It's too early. Did anyone have breakfast yesterday? Afraz, you had breakfast?
Yes.
Okay, what did you eat yesterday for breakfast?
Banana and just fruit.
Banana and fruit, just fruit?
Like raspberries and
Okay.
strawberries.
Did the banana come first or the raspberries and strawberries when you ate your food?
Banana.
The banana came first. Okay. What if I had a breakfast and I decided to have bagels? No, not bagels. Let's say I had eggs. Okay, I had scrambled eggs. I'm just making this up. I had scrambled eggs, and on the side I had like a little piece of goat cheese, and just totally making this up, and a little bit of sausage. Okay, but the main meal is the eggs. Okay. Now, but let's say I'm served this breakfast by my wife, and I'm looking at the plate, and I'm very attracted to the sausage. Like, oh, that looks really good. And I ate the sausage first. And then I'm like, oh, the goat cheese looks good too. And then I have the goat cheese. And then I eat my eggs and I have the eggs. Okay? You with me so far?
Yeah.
So I have the sausage and the goat cheese and then the eggs. But what was the main meal? The eggs. It's like 4 eggs scrambled, okay? 4 scrambled eggs. That's my main meal. So when I talk about it, am I going to say like, hey, for breakfast yesterday, I had sausage and goat cheese and eggs? No, because the way we talk about our breakfast, our meals, is when someone asks you, hey, you went to this new restaurant? Yeah, I did. Well, what did you eat? You're not going to say, I had the appetizer, and you start with the main thing. You're like, hey, I had the burger, right? That's what you say. Oh yeah, there was also like some salad and whatever, dessert, whatever. But oh man, the burger was good, better than the steak. So I will say I had scrambled eggs with sausage and goat cheese. Does that mean I had scrambled eggs first? No, it's just the main meal, right? Let's say the president of the country. Let's not talk about the president of the country. That's just sad. President of another country is coming to my house, okay, and they have their security guard with them as well. Am I going to say, oh yeah, this morning, you know what happened? The security guard and the president entered my house. No, I'm going to say the president came to my house with the security guard. Even though the security guard entered first to make sure everything's okay, I'm going to say the president and the security guard. You see how we speak, right? We don't, wow doesn't indicate tartib. The Hanafis are actually very, very strong in this opinion. The Shafi'is say, no, the wow indicates tartib. Now, the Shafi'is have a very good argument too, in my opinion. The Shafi'is say this is word of Allah. This is word of Allah. You think Allah is just going to put some random order in the Quran, or Allah is going to have some logic, some rationale, some sequence to the order? The order matters. Okay. The Hanafis are arguing the order doesn't matter. The Shafis are arguing the wow does matter. And so that's anyway. Again, the Hanafis would argue that tartib is good. It's sunnah. You should do it, but you don't need it. Don't make it conditional. Wal muwalat, what tasmiyah? What's muwalat? Anyone know? It's a condition of the Malikis. What they say is when you wash one part, don't let it like dry off before you wash the next one. Like you got to go like, relatively sequential. Like you can't just be like, oh, I wash my hands. Now I'm going to go like do something else, come back and then do this and come back and like go back and forth. Like that's not wudu. You can't just be like doing it in pieces. You got to kind of do it together, right? You do one, then the next one, the next one. It's not order, but it's like you can't just let things dry off and then continue. And then the tasmiyah, that's a condition for the Hanbalis, I know, is that you have to have basmala based on the hadith. Anyway, so you got all these like people adding all this stuff. Shafi's adding tartib and niyyah, and the Malikis adding mu'alat, and the Hanbalis adding tasmiyah. And the Hanafi argument is, come on, guys, all those things are nice and sunnah to do. Don't make the wudu muqayyad like that when the verse is mutlaq, okay? فلا يزاد عليه شرط النية والترتيب والموالاة والتسمية بالخبر from the hadith. Don't take the hadith and add conditions to the Quran. ولكن يعمل بالخبر على وجه لا يتغير به حكم الكتاب. You can act on the hadith in a way that doesn't make the verse conditional. الغسل المطلق فرض بحكم الكتاب والنية, and you could say والترتيب والموالاة والتسمية, these are all sunnah بحكم الخبر. These are all sunnah things, but don't make it fard because then you're putting conditions in the Quran. Continue.
وكذلك قلنا في قوله تعالى الزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما 100 جلدة إن الكتاب جعل جلد 100 حدا للزنا فلا يزاد عليه التغريب حدا لقوله عليه السلام البكر بالبكر جلد 100 وتغريب عام بل يعمل بالخبر على وجه لا يتغير به حكم الكتاب فيكون الجلد حدا شرعيا بحكم الكتاب والتغريب مشروعا سياسة بحكم الخبر.
Okay, Allah says in the Quran in Surah An-Nur, الزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما 100 جلدة. Allah says in the Quran that the male fornicator or adulterer and the female fornicatress or adulteress, whip them, lash them, فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما, each of them, 100 جلدة, 100 times. إن الكتاب جعل جلد 100 حدا للزنا. So the lashing, okay, 100 times is the had for zina. We know that. We know that. I mean, of course, there's lots of this issue is much more complicated because there's details around what happens to a slave. There's details around what happens if you're married versus you're not married, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is anyway one of the. Let's not get into the detail, but this is one of the punishments, right? So this is the had. فلا يزاد عليه التغريب حدا لقوله عليه السلام. There's a hadith we have البكر بالبكر جلد 100. Okay, so the hadith says, so this is the, obviously this is the non-married, because what's the punishment for the married adulterer? You guys know this.
Severe?
Stonings?
Stoning to death.
Yeah.
Is stoning, right?
Stoning to death, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is for the what al-bikru bil-bikri. This is the virgin. This is the one who's not married, right? Because the crime of zina is one of the most disgusting things on the planet. Absolutely the most disgusting things on the planet. And by the way, like people don't talk about this, but if somebody is watching pornography, they're literally watching somebody else do zina. Like they don't even think about it. It's like, oh, I'm not doing anything as bad. It's like, no, you are. This is exactly what you're doing. It's one of the most disgusting things you could do, but like when you take that into, like if you're married, then the level of that becomes, I mean, this is one of the worst sins you can commit, right? It just becomes so much worse because marriage is extremely, extremely, extremely sacred contract. And engaging in zina is breaking that contract, right? It's a violation of that contract. Anyway, al-bikru bil-bikri. So if you have the virgin man and the virgin woman, jildu mi'atin, again, it says, lash 100 times. Same thing as the Quran says, but there's an addition over here in this hadith where it says, وَتَغْرِيبُ عَام. Okay, what does تغريب عام mean? What does عام mean?
A year.
A year. So you got to banish them for a year, okay? So now we're saying, well, the Quran was mutlaq about it, and it said, lash them 100 times. But the hadith is adding something to the Quran. It's saying, lash them 100 times and banish them for a year, okay? So how do we reconcile this issue? Because we can't take something mutlaq from the Quran and take khabar wahid against it and make it muqayyad. بل يعمل بالخبر على وجه لا يتغير به حكم الكتاب. So you can act on a khabar in a way that doesn't change the hukm of the Quran. What you're going to say is that فيكون الجلد حدا شرعيا بحكم الكتاب. The had punishment for adultery for the unmarried stays at 100 lashes. Okay, that does not change. What taghribu, and to like banish someone for a year, mashru'an, it's permissible, siyasatan, politically, as in like the judge can decide to do this, bihukm al-khabari, to act on the hadith. So the 100 lashes you got to do, and then the banishment for a year, the judge can decide, you know what, these two people, they were like close to each other and this happened. Maybe like it's better that this person is not so close to this other person. Let's like banish them for a year and do that. So it's up to the judge. Do they want to do it? Do they not want to do it? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Is it a good thing? Is it not a good thing? It's up to the judge, but it's not part of the had. Okay, so we reconciled it by making one part had, which is the mutlaq of the Quran. Then we said the other piece is not the part of the had, it's something else. Okay, next one.
وكذلك في قوله تعالى وليطوفوا بالبيت العتيق مطلق في مسمى الطواف بالبيت فلا يزاد عليه شرط الوضوء بالخبر بل يعمل به على وجه لا يتغير به حكم الكتاب بأن يكون مطلق الطواف فرضا بحكم الكتاب والوضوء واجبا بحكم الخبر فيجبر النقصان اللازم بترك الوضوء الواجب بالدم.
Okay, this one's the famous difference of opinion between the Hanafis and the Shafi'is. For the Shafi'is, when you perform tawaf, you need to have wudu. And for the Hanafis, you don't need to have wudu. This becomes, I mean, it might not seem like a big deal, but it actually does become a big deal. I mean, the haram is so crowded, right? And so you're like doing your tawaf, you're going around 6 times, and then like some woman like accidentally touches you and you're like, oh no, I just lost my wudu and I gotta go figure out what to do and how to deal with that. But it becomes even harder for a woman who's menstruating, and let's say she's dealing with like the last tawaf, which is fard in Hajj or something like that. And now she wants to make tawaf, her ticket's booked, she needs to fly out, but she can't make tawaf because she's menstruating. Like it creates this really, really big issues. Actually, a lot of people now give fatwa on the Hanafi madhab. Even if they're not Hanafi, they're like, yeah, let's just like take the Hanafi opinion in this one to make life easier. But anyway, why is it that the Hanafis say you don't need wudu, but the Shafi'is say you do need wudu? Okay, the Shafi'is kind of take it from the other hadith which talk about tawaf being like prayer, etc., etc., and needing wudu. And even for the Hanafis, they need to find a solution. But anyway, here's how it works. وَكَذَلِكَ فِي قَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى وَلْيَطَّوَّفُوا بِالْبَيْتِ الْعَتِيقِ. Allah says, do tawaf of the Kaaba. مُطْلَقٌ. This is mutlaq. في مسمى الطواف بالبيت. To do tawaf around the Kaaba. Does it say you need to have wudu? No, it doesn't say you need to have wudu. فلا يزاد عليه شرط الوضوء بالخبر. You can't take the hadith and add wudu as a condition to it. بل يعمل به على وجه. So you act, however you act upon it in a way لا يتغير به حكم الكتاب, in a way that doesn't change the حكم of the Quran, بأن يكون مطلق الطواف فرضا بحكم الكتاب. So doing the tawaf is fard, والوضوء واجبا بحكم الخبر. So you need to have wudu as a wajib. We've seen this before, right? We saw this with the فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ قُرْآنٍ and لَا صَلَاةَ إِلَّا لَا صَلَاةَ بِغَيْرِ فَاتِحِ الْكِتَابِ or whatever. There's many variations of the hadith. So the wudu becomes wajib. So if you don't do the wudu, then you will need to like rectify the tawaf somehow and do a sacrifice for that, right? So it's not like you can just like not have wudu. You're still gonna have to do a sacrifice, but at least you have a way out. فيجبر النقصان اللازم بترك الوضوء الواجب بالدم. That's the بالدم. That's the sacrifice that we're talking about. So if you can do tawaf without the wudu, but then you're gonna have to sacrifice to correct for it.
Sheikh, so we're saying the wudu is based on what? Based on the hadith?
Yeah.
So then why do they make the wudu wajib for this act, but then they don't make, for example, things like sequence wajib in something like wudu if it's based on hadith?
Why don't they make it wajib based on?
We said that the Ahnaf
Yeah, I understand the question.
as opposed to saying it's a sunnah to do wudu, right?
When do they decide to make something sunnah versus when do they decide to make it wajib, right?
Mhm.
So the sunnah, okay. So there's going to be an entire chapter that, yeah, because this issue is like, it's a bit hard to explain, and it's nuanced, okay? So there's going to be a whole chapter we're going to get to on al-amr al-mutlaq. Actually, we're going to get to a whole section called al-amr, which is the command. Then we're going to get to another one called an-nahi, which is the prohibition. By default, in the Hanafi madhab, by default, things are going to, when Allah commands you, and I don't want to get into this whole topic because this topic will be covered later, inshallah, but I'm going to summarize the concept for you. The concept is, by default, when Allah asks you to do something, is going to be considered an obligation by default. Okay? What takes it out of the default is when you find a qarina or qara'in. When you find some sort of an indication or evidence that what was not intended by it is an obligation. So in very simple terms, if I said, everyone in class needs to stand up now, did you take that to mean that I'm commanding you and you have to do it, or that it's optional?
Command.
Command, right? Like the wording in my tone was pretty clear. That's the default, by the way, even if my tone and wording wasn't clear. I said, if I just said, everyone stand up, wouldn't you take the default to be standing up? Yeah, like, why? Because I'm in a position of authority. Okay, so there's a few different rules that fall under this. I'm in a position of authority. If I wasn't in a position of authority, you would take it as a request. Okay, but because I'm in a position of authority, you take it as a command. By the way, the word amr in grammar means one thing, right? It's a sigha, it's a pattern, it means, means one thing. In usul al-fiqh, the word amr has many, like, the word amr is something more specific than that. Because if I tell Allah, what do I do when I make dua? What do I say? I'm like commanding Allah, right? In the amr tense, it's fi'al amr. I say, Allah, forgive my sins. Do I say, Allah, please forgive my sins? No, Allah, I'm command. It's like the tense is a command. Allah, forgive my sins. But is it really, am I commanding Allah? Who am I, astaghfirullah. I'm not commanding Allah. That's just the amr in terms of the verb form. I'm making a dua to Allah, right? If guests come into my house, what do I say? Sit down, right? Well, in English, we say, please sit down, right? In Arabic, what do we say?
Ijlis, so like sit down, it's a command.
What do you say?
Would it be like in the amr form?
How would you say it? Anyone speak Arabic enough to say, like, when guests come to your, how do you say sit down?
Like ijlis?
Ijlis.
Ijlis. Yeah, jalasa yajlis. So ijlis.
Your guests are going to come, you're going to say ijlis?
I mean, usually that's what they say, right?
It's not very polite nowadays.
Like with a kind voice.
You would say something like, tafaddalu, like, please, like, tafaddalu, ijlisu law samahtum min fadlikum. If you will permit us, may Allah, bless. You're like adding all these words. But the reason I want to point that out is that's actually like not the proper way to do it. Now we've learned this from other cultures and we bring it from English. Everything we say, oh, would you like something to eat? Min fadlik, law samaht, law samaht, if you will permit, right? Min fadlik, like, so we're adding all these equivalents to please because we're used to this English culture of, oh, please, 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 right? But that's not proper Arabic. The proper Fusha Arabic that was spoken was tafaddalu or ijlisu or whatever, right? We don't say please. It's automatically assumed these are guests that came to your house. So command can be a dua to Allah. It can be a request, please sit down, right? It's a respect type of thing. It could be if it's someone coming from like younger than you, then it's a request. If it's someone in a position of authority, it's a command. The context tells you what it's about. Arabic is fascinating. You don't need to say, oh, I'm commanding you, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that, I'm that. Anyway, a little bit off topic, but the basic idea is the commands by default when coming from Allah indicate obligation, unless you find qara'in or qarina or something that indicates it's not, okay? And those are the rules that we haven't learned. And I'll tell you, we're not going to learn them really. All we're going to learn in this book is that there are indications which tell you when something is an obligation or when it's not an obligation. Is keeping a beard wajib or sunnah? You guys are in year 4. Come on, I need faster answers than this. Is keeping a beard wajib or sunnah? What do you like? What are you thinking? Why aren't you answering my question? What's going on in your head?
Yeah, Ahnaf, it's wajib. But is there a difference in other schools or no?
It's
I-
wajib according
I-
to you. Okay, what makes it wajib?
Shafi'i say it's sunnah, right?
Yeah. That's why you find all these like non-bearded people in like Egypt, right? So
Yeah.
what's the deal? Why is there a difference of opinion? What's the evidence for keeping a beard anyway?
I think from the hadith where it says, trim the mustaches but let the beards grow.
Okay. So is that an obligation or is that a sunnah? We get a difference of opinion. Yeah. So even though, look, the theory is sound. We have a command, al-amr al-mutlaq from Allah. It's just a command by itself. It's unconditional command. You just let your beard grow, right? Is there some like let your beard grow if this? No. It's al-amr al-mutlaq. It's an unconditional command. The default should be it's an obligation, but we still find differences of opinion because these rules are not. There's an element of human interpretation and subjectivity. So is there a qarina? Is there not a qarina? Was the Prophet ﷺ commanding something that's cultural? Was he saying it because he wants you to differentiate yourself from the women? Is he saying it because it clearly can't be like, oh, you want to differentiate yourself from the kuffar because the Arabs would all keep beards. Forget the Arabs, man. Look at any photos of men in general, across societies until what, like 100 years ago, men would keep beards. That's what men did. And women would cover their head and they would wear, long skirts and long pants. And it was just how the world worked until like relatively recently. So it was just like, okay, so is that like is it out of respect? Is that what men do? Is that what noble men do? Is that the normal thing to do? Like what's the reason? So you do find these differences of opinion, but keep in mind there's an entire science, an entire set of conditions behind how do you know something's wajib or sunnah. And we're only in year 4, man. That's like a year 9 thing to study. Okay. Sorry, I just teased you and I didn't give you the answer, but go ahead.
No, it's okay. وكذلك قوله تعالى واركعوا مع الراكعين مطلق في مسمى الركوع فلا يزاد عليه شرط التعديل بحكم الخبر ولكن يعمل بالخبر على وجه لا يتغير بحكم الكتاب فيكون مطلق الركوع فرضا بحكم الكتاب وتعديل واجبا بحكم الخبر.
Okay, we're like repeating the same expressions again and again and again, right? So this should become a lot easier because we keep saying the same thing. وكذلك قوله تعالى واركعوا مع الراكعين. Allah says in the Quran, do ruku' with the people who are doing ruku'. مطلق, it's mutlaq, unconditional. في مسمى الركوع, when it comes to ruku' فلا يزاد عليه شيء. So you can't be adding to this. شرط التعديل بحكم الخبر. Where do we get this? What does تعديل mean?
I mean, we get this in the context of Jarh and Ta'dil, right? So it's like is it the conditions for authenticity or honesty?
This is not to do with hadith. Different context.
To do the action properly.
Yeah, to kind of do the action properly. Like, when you sit between the sajdas, the Hanafis don't require this, but the other, I forget, I think the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis have it as a rukn that between the two sajdas you have to sit. And the sitting has to be long enough that you can't just be like, came out of sajda and went back into, like, you can't be like boom, 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 okay? The Hanafi prayer can be boom, 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 boom. The other ones cannot. I think Shafis and Hanbalis, you gotta come out of sajda, sit long enough, and go back into sajda. Otherwise, your prayer is not even valid. Okay. So that's called ta'dil because what you're doing is ta'dilul arkan. You're letting or ta'dil, like you're letting all of your
limbs rest.
Yes, let all the limbs rest. Okay, you're letting all of your kind of like muscles or joints or whatever, like you're letting them all come to a certain position. Okay, so you're doing straight ruku. You're not like, all like punched up or whatever. Like it's a proper ruku. You're standing up straight in the middle. You're giving it long enough. You go into sajda long enough. You come out long enough. You go back into sajda long enough. Okay, that's basically the condition. For the Hanafis, it's sunnah, but it's not wajib. Okay, to do that.
And that's based on the hadith.
Sorry. It's wajib. It's not fard. Okay.
Oh, that's a difference, yeah.
Yeah, it's wajib, and this is from the hadith, which is actually in the footnote. Okay, this hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, where a man came and he prayed, and the Prophet ﷺ said, "Hey, what did you do?" And he's like, "I just prayed." He's like, "No, you have not prayed. Go do it again." He did it again. He comes back. Prophet said, "Nope, you have not prayed. Go do it again." Right? And he comes again. The Prophet was like, "Nope, you haven't prayed." So. And then he explained, and he says, "Hey, when you go into ruku', like stay calm. When you come up, then do this. When you do sajda, then you got to stay in sajda properly. Can't just be like popping up and down like that. Okay, that's not a proper prayer. Okay. So anyway, this is فلا يزاد عليه شرط التعديل بحكم الخبر. You can't take the hadith and put that as a condition. The Quran just says do ruku'. Okay. ولكن يعمل بالخبر على وجه لا يتخير به حكم الكتاب. But you can act in a hadith in a way that doesn't contradict what's going on in the Quran. فيكون مطلق الركوع فرضا بحكم الكتاب. So just doing ركوع is فرض based on the Quran. والتعديل واجبا بحكم الخبر. And doing تعديل is going to be wajib based on the hadith.
So Sheikh, in the case like this where we say if you miss a wajib action, you have to do sajda suhu, right? So like this isn't something like Fatiha where like, oh, you miss it. So but do you technically still have to do sajda suhu if you realize that you didn't necessarily stay still? Okay. وعلى هذا قلنا يجوز الوضوء بماء الزعفران وبكل ماء خالطه شيء طاهر فغير أحد أوصافه لأن شرط المصير إلى التيمم عدم مطلق الماء وهذا قد بقي ماء مطلقا فإن قيد الإضافة ما أزال عنه اسم الماء بل قرره ويدخل تحت حكم مطلق الماء وكان شرط بقائه على صفة المنزل من السماء قيدا لهذا المطلق وبه يخرج حكم ماء الزعفران والصابون والأشنان وأمثاله وخرج عن هذه القضية ماء النجس بقوله تعالى ولكن يريد ليطهركم والنجس لا يفيد الطهارة وبهذه الإشارة علم أن الحدث شرط لوجوب الوضوء فإن تحسين الطهارة بدون وجود الحدث محال.
Okay, وعلى هذا قلنا. Okay, so then continuing on with the same idea. يجوز الوضوء بماء الزعفران. Can you make wudu with water that is, saffron water, like it's got saffron in it? And the answer is yes. يجوز الوضوء بماء الزعفران وبكل ماء خالطه شيء طاهر. And with anything that has something pure mixed in it. فغير أحد أوصافه. And one of its features has changed. What features are we talking about? Does it list here? No. So there are 3 features: taste, smell, and color. If one of those has changed, taste has changed, smell has changed, color has changed, not a big deal, okay? Not a big deal as long as ماء خالطه شيء طاهر. It's something pure that got mixed with the water, okay? فغير أحد أوصافه لأن شرط المصير إلى التيمم عدم مطلق الماء وهذا قد بقي ماء مطلقا. So, you're not going to go to tayammum because you still have the possibility of doing wudu. And water is still water. I can call it, ma'u za'faran, but it's still ma'. And so as long as it's water, it's pure, I can do wudu with it, not a problem. فإن قيد الإضافة ما أزال عنه اسم الماء. So for me to say like, oh, but it's not water, it's saffron water, it's like, no, you're unnecessarily restricting it. فيدخل تحت حكم مطلق الماء. It's still water. Water's water. وكان شرط بقائه على صفة المنزل من السماء قيدا لهذا المطلق. Okay, so it doesn't take away from the fact that it is still permissible to use. وَبِي يُخَرَّجُ حُكْمُ مَاءِ الزَّعْفَرَانِ. So based on this, you can make wudu with saffron water. وَالصَّابُونِ. If you have a little bit of soap mixed in the water, no problem. وَالْأَشْنَانِ. You have some salt mixed in it. وَأَمْثَالِهِ, and other things like it. Okay. وخرج عن هذه القضية الماء النجس بقوله تعالى. Okay, so then you start creating an argument like, okay, so I put some soap in the water, you know, and you allowed me to use it. I put some salt in the water, you allowed me to use it. I put some saffron in the water, you allowed me to use it. What if I like put some urine in the water? Like, it's still urine water. Like, why can't you use that? So why can't you use urine water? What's the big deal?
It's not considered طاهر.
Yeah, but where are you getting that evidence from?
The hadith.
Hmm?
Hadith.
No. You can't be using hadith against Quran.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So anyway, the answer is the same verse we talked about before. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. How does that verse end? Allah says in that verse, ما يريد الله.
Oh, sorry. No,
Good. Good.
وإن كنتم جنبا فطهروا. I was just reading it in my head.
Yeah.
Um,
It says ما يريد الله ليجعل عليكم من حرج. Allah doesn't want to create hardship for you. Right? ولكن يريد ليطهركم. But what Allah wants to do is He wants to purify you. So the Quran itself says ولكن يريد ليطهركم. Like it says وخرج عن هذه. So you can remove from this generality of I can use za'faran water, sabun water, ashnan, وأمثالي. You can use all of these things. وخرج عن هذه. But excluded from this is القضية الماء النجس. In قوله تعالى, you can't use najis because ولكن يريد ليطهركم. والنجس لا يفيد الطهارة. The najis water is not going to make you pure. Allah says He wants you to be pure. How can you use najis? Makes no sense. وبهذه الإشارة علم أن الحدث شرط لوجوب الوضوء. فإن تحصيل الطهارة بدون وجود الحدث محال. Let me just see what the Sharh says about this. This is a side point. ولكن يريد ليطهركم.
Sheikh.
Yeah.
So this passage right here, is this like an example of a mutlaq? What's he trying to say here?
Which one?
The passage we're on.
The وَبِهِ يُخَرَّجُ. This one? Like
يجوز الوضوء بالماء الزعفراني.
يجوز الوضوء بماء الزعفراني. This
Yeah.
one?
Yeah.
I think what he's saying is you're supposed to make wudu with ma.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's mutlaq. And so
Oh.
for you to like start adding conditions that, oh, it needs to be like this and the water needs to be like that and the water needs to be like that, you're taking something that's mutlaq and you're putting all these, you're doing qaid of it, which you're not allowed to do. This book goes all over the place in tangents and side points. Okay, so we're like way like off on a tangent right now.
Yeah, because I was confused at that. Okay.
Yeah. Welcome to the Nusul al-Shashi.
Because he was mentioning verses from the Quran and then something
Yeah.
completely different.
Anyway, this whole side point is like completely irrelevant. So we're just gonna like this last part. Yeah, I don't like this example anyway. But anyway, we'll leave this alone. Basically, what he's saying is, if you didn't have hadath, then you wouldn't need wudu. He's deriving another side point. وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ. Okay. Let's take a 8-minute break. I need to use the restroom. And we'll resume at 8:35, inshallah.
Okay.
Okay, بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Where are we? Oh, okay. Page 48. Continue.
سنة قال أبو حنيفة المظاهر إذا جاء. Sorry? Can you hear me?
Oh, I had turned off the volume.
No problem.
Like,
قال
are
أبو
you muted? Like, you weren't muted. I muted you. Go ahead.
قال أبو حنيفة المظاهر إذا جامع امرأته في خلال الإطعام لا يستأنف الإطعام لأن الكتاب مطلق في حق الإطعام فلا يزاد عليه شرط عدم المسيس بالقياس على الصوم بل المطلق يجري على إطلاقه والمقيد على تقييده.
Okay. What's a mudahir?
This is like the whole ruling of. Didn't we start this book with this? I can't remember. But when you tell your wife that she's like your mother. Okay, so it
We
was a
didn't
way.
start the book with it, but we started. I mean, I talked about making halal haram and haram halal, right?
Yes.
I think we talked about that. So in Surah Mujadala, we get قد سمع الله قول التي تجادلك في زوجها وتشتكي إلى الله والله يسمع تحاوركما, right? So this is the practice of a man telling a woman, your back to me is like my mother's back. Like, hey, look, we're supposed to have like a intimate, husband, wife, like a sexual type relationship. It's a different kind of love we're supposed to have, but you're like my mother to me. And so he's like making his wife haram to himself, to like have an intimate relationship with. And this was something that was sometimes done at the time of the Prophet ﷺ amongst the non-Muslims. And so this wife goes and complains to the Prophet ﷺ and says, hey, my husband did this to me. And the Prophet ﷺ, like, oh, it's okay and all this. But then Allah reveals that Allah heard this complaint. And so that's Surah Mujadala. And Surah Mujadala, like, basically, Allah answers and he says there's going to be kafara for this. There's going to be, you can't just get away with that. That's a pretty mean thing to do to your wife. And so you're gonna have to deal with that. So what is the kafara for this? So we have قال أبو حنيفة المظاهر. This is the person who did ظهار, right? This is the man who did ظهار. إذا جامع امرأته. So now he goes and has relations with his wife. في خلال الإطعام. Okay, so this is. Let's just talk about, without going through the text first, let's talk about this. So someone who does al-zihar, this is a mudahir. What is the kafara?
Feeding 60 people.
Before that.
Is this the whole same kafara about freeing a slave?
Yeah. So Allah says in the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ يُظَاهِرُونَ مِن نِسَائِهِم. The one who does the zihar, ثُمَّ يَعُودُونَ. Then he wants to, undo it. لِمَا قَالُوا فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ. Meaning?
To free a slave?
Free a slave. مِن قَبْلِ أَن يَتَمَاسَّ. What does that mean?
Before they have relations.
Before they have relations again. He's got to free the slave before he can go back to her. Yeah? Everyone on the same page? Okay. ذَلِكُمْ تُوعَظُونَ بِهِ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. Then Allah continues. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ. Whoever is not able to free a slave. فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يَتَمَاسَّ. You got to fast for 60 consecutive days. مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يَتَمَاسَّ. Meaning?
Again, before
he goes back to his wife, okay? So he's either got to free a slave before he can go back to her, or he's got to fast 60 days before he goes back to her. But this is the interesting part. Allah continues, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. Whoever's not able to do that. So he's not able to free a slave. See, this is in sequence. You got to do this. If not, then this. If not, then this. This isn't like, oh, this isn't that. This is whoever's able to do this, you got to do this. Step A. Can't do step A, got to do step B. Can't do B, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَإِطْعَامُ سِتِّينَ مِسْكِينًا. You got to feed 60 people, right? Step A, can't do, then do step B, can't do that, then do step C. Okay? Does Allah say مِن قَبْلِ أَنْ يَتَمَاسَّ? No. Okay, so what do you think? Do you have to feed the 60 people before you go back to your wife, or do you not have to feed the 60 people before you go back to your wife?
You have to feed the 60 people.
You're Shafi'i on this one. So the Hanafis would argue what? It's mutlaq, right? Mutlaq. Like, why would Allah repeat it twice? I would get it if you said, oh, Allah said it the first time, min qabli an yatamassa. Then he didn't say it the second time, and he didn't say it the third time, and you can make an argument, look, Allah doesn't want to repeat himself, so he said it once, and you can assume it applies to the second and third time. But Allah says it the first time. Allah says it the second time. Allah does not say it the third time. That's a harder argument to create. Oh, well, see, the first two, Allah said it. He also meant it in the third one. A little bit of a harder argument to create, right? You see the issue here? So, قال أبو حنيفة المظاهر إذا جامع امرأته في خلال الإطعام لا يستأنف الإطعام لأن الكتاب مطلق في حق الإطعام. So he goes back to his wife. Well, let's say he's في خلال الإطعام. So he's feeding 60 people. Okay. I don't know, in 1 week he's gonna go, or 6 days, so doing 10 people a day. Okay, that's what he's decided to do. He's doing 10 people a day. It's about all he can handle. So he 2 days into it, he's fed 20 people, 40 more to go. He goes back to his wife. They do their thing. And according to the Hanafis, is that a problem? No, لأن الكتاب مطلق في حق الإطعام. Okay, it's مطلق. Doesn't say من قبل أن يتماس. فلا يزاد عليه شرط عدم المسيس بالقياس على الصوم. You can't say, well, if I was to fast 60 days من قبل أن يتماس. This is a different thing. بل المطلق يجري على إطلاقه. The thing that's مطلق is going to stay being إطلاق. والمقيد على تقييده. The thing that's مقيد is going to stay مقيد. The thing that's مطلق is going to stay مطلق. Okay. So the Shafi'is argue من قبل أن يتماس من قبل أن يتماس من قبل أن يتماس. The Hanafis argue من قبل أن يتماس من قبل أن يتماس. Third one doesn't have that condition. Okay. Pretty straightforward to understand why one side went this way and one side went the other way. Personally, I think the Hanafi logic seems sounder to me. I mean, again, if Allah said it 3 times, that would be one thing. If Allah said it 1 time, that would be one thing. Allah said it twice and not the third one, you know? What's the wisdom behind it? Allah knows. Allah knows the wisdom behind it, right? وَكَذَلِكَ قُلْنَا.
Sorry, where did I lose my... لذلك قلنا الرقبة في كفارة الظهار واليمين مطلقة فلا يزاد عليه شرط الإيمان بالقياس على كفارة القتل.
Okay, so there are 3 تحرير رقبتين that are mentioned for kafara in the Quran, right? I'm trying to remember where the kafaratul yamin is, but I remember where the kafaratul qatl is. So Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ أَن يَقْتُلَ مُؤْمِنًا إِلَّا خَطَأً. Okay, believer can't kill another believer. But if you did it as a mistake, وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً, you did it as a mistake, فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. You got to free a believing slave. Yeah? The verse we just did for Zihar, what did it say? فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ. Did it say رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ? No, it just said رَقَبَةٍ. For killing a believer by mistake, it's تَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. Okay? So 3 different places in the Quran, the kafara for zihar, which we just talked about, and the kafara for breaking an oath, which we didn't look at the verse. Both of them just say tahriru raqaba. The kafara for qatl, for murdering a believer mistakenly, is tahriru raqaba, raqabatin mu'mina. 2 of them are raqaba, 1 of them is raqaba mu'mina. Okay? So for the ones that are just raqaba, are they mu'mina or not mu'mina in your opinion? Your opinion. Forget the Hanafi thing. What's your opinion?
Well, if it's just a raqaba, I wouldn't specify it to mu'mina.
Okay, so you're following the Hanafi logic here, right? Allah said mu'mina. Who are you to go? Allah says raqaba. Who are you to go in and add the mu'mina condition? Yeah. So وكذلك قلنا الرقبة في كفارة الظهار واليمين مطلقة. كفارة الظهار كفارة اليمين فتحرير رقبة. That's it. فلا يزاد عليه شرط الإيمان. For you to say that they have to be mu'min بالقياس, by doing qiyas على كفارة القتل, that is a mistake, right? So the Shafi'is actually say all 3 are raqaba mu'mina. Okay, they say all 3 are raqaba mu'mina because in one place Allah said mu'mina, so in the other 2 he meant mu'mina. The Hanafis say no, these 2 are just raqaba. That one is raqaba mu'mina. So don't mix raqaba mu'mina and do qiyas. Oh, this one's raqaba mu'mina, so the other 2 also have to be raqaba mu'mina. Again, I find the Hanafi position here to be more appealing because, like, if you think about it, like even the punishment was man qatala mu'minan khata'an, right? You killed a believer, so then you free a believer. You know, kind of like, again, Allah knows best, right? But it kind of goes with that. Whereas the other 2, there's no mu'mina. So something mutlaq in the Quran, we don't make it muqayyad. That's the Hanafi argument here.
سؤال فإن قيل إن الكتاب في مسح الرأس يوجب مسح مطلق البعض وقيدتموه بمقدار الناصية بالخبر. سؤال آخر والكتاب مطلق في انتهاء الحرمة الغليظة بالنكاح وقيدتموه.
Yeah, let's get to that. I guess keep going. That's fine.
وقيدتموه بالدخول بحديث امرأة رفاعة. الإجابة عن السؤال الأول قلنا إن الكتاب ليس بمطلق في باب المسح، فإن حكم المطلق أن يكون الآتي بأي فرد كان آتيا بالمأمور به، والآتي أي بعض كان ها هنا ليس بآت بالمأمور به، فإنه لو مسح على النصف على الثلثين لا يكون الكل فرضا، وبه فارق المطلق المجمل. Should we keep going?
Okay. So سؤال فإن قيل إن الكتاب. Okay, so now we've established this principle, right? Something that's mutlaq in the Quran, you can't make it muqayyad. And we went through like a million examples just now, right? The whole class was just examples of that. So now somebody comes in, they want to critique the Hanafis. Say, hey, okay, فإن قيل. قيل always means that other people are saying something, or weak people are saying something, you know? You don't even mention them. فإن قيل, somebody said, إن الكتاب في مسح الرأس يوجب مسح مطلق البعض وقيدتموه بمقدار ناصية بالخبر. Somebody comes along, says, hey, you Hanafi people, the Quran says, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, wipe your head. Does Allah says how much of the head to wipe in the Quran? But the Hanafis say what?
What?
Yeah. Allah said, wipe your head. You're adding a thing to it. You took something mutlaq, you're making it muqayyad. Aha, gotcha. So that's the argument. Okay, so how do we answer that? So alun akhar, there's another argument as well. We'll get to that one, okay? Let's just do al-ijabatu let's go one at a time. He's asking two questions and he's giving two answers. Let's just do the first question, the first answer, and then we'll do the second one and the second answer, okay? So su'alun, the question is, Allah didn't restrict it, you restricted this thing. What's going on? Al-ijabatu ani su'ali al-awwali. The answer to the first question. قلنا إن الكتاب. This is not inna. Okay, here's the. If you look at the text in the book, move the alif from the first word to the second word. Okay, it's inna al-kitaba. It's not inna al-kitaba. Okay, so the space is in the wrong place. Move the space one letter earlier. Inna al-kitaba. إن الكتاب ليس بمطلق في باب المسح. فإن حكم المطلق أن يكون الآتي بأي فرد كان آتيا بالمأمور به، والآتي بأي بعض كان هنا ليس بآت بالمأمور به، فإنه لو مسح على النصف أو على الثلثين لا يكون الكل فرضا، وبه فارق المطلق المجمل. Okay, I'm going to simplify the argument. The argument that's being made is everybody agrees that you have to wipe the head. Okay, everybody agrees you have to wipe the head. The Shafi'is say a portion has to be wiped. It's a different portion than the Hanafis. The Malikis say the whole head has to be wiped. The Hanbalis say the whole head has to be wiped. Okay, everyone's got like difference of opinion on how much needs to be wiped, but everybody agrees it needs to be wiped. Okay, so that part is mutlaq. The fact that the head needs to be wiped is mutlaq. Everybody agrees that part is mutlaq. But how much of the head needs to be wiped? That is not, it's not a mutlaq muqayyad issue. We're not arguing that. We're changing the argument. We're saying it's mujmal. We don't know how much of the head needs to be wiped. The Quran isn't restricting it. The Quran just doesn't give you an answer to that. The Quran leaves that as mujmal. So when something is mujmal, what do? We're going to learn about mujmal later. Mujmal is one of those things that unless the speaker clarifies for you, you don't know what to do. So when Allah says in the Quran, for example, give zakat. Okay. Then you're like, wait, what does that mean? What's zakat? What do you mean give zakat? And then you go to the hadith and you're like, oh, for every 40 sheep, I have to give 1 sheep. Ah, okay, zakat is 2.5%. Oh, you can only give zakat to these 8 categories. Okay, got it. And then zakat has to be when you have nisab and a hawl goes by. So you have to have a certain minimum amount and a lunar year has to pass. Then you start getting all those details. Something that was mujmal, you're like, what is this zakat business? You have no idea what it is. And then the hadith and the sunnah, they come and they clarify that, okay? So we know from the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, there's a narration where the Prophet ﷺ was making wudu and he was wiping over his head. And then we get from the narration that you're supposed to wipe a portion of the head. And we have So from the khabar, we get how much needs to be wiped because it was mujmal. So it's not a mutlaq muqayyad issue. We say this is a mujmal issue. Okay. The second question is سؤال آخر والكتاب مطلق في انتهاء الحرمة الغليظة بالنكاح وقيدتموه بالدخول بحديث امرأة رفاعة. So we say that when you have a hurma ghaliza of nikah, like as in you've been through 3 divorces, right? You've reached the end of a divorce where you can no longer get married to the husband that you were married to, okay? And then we say the only way that you can get married to that man again is what do you have to do?
Simply marry someone else and engage in intimacy with them.
Yeah, but where do we get that from? You got to marry someone else. And then you can, and then what? What do you have to do? You can't just marry someone else. You also have to
Be intimate with them.
You have to engage in relations with them, and then you can divorce them and go back to the first one. Where do we get this from? We get this from a hadith. This is the hadith of Imra'atu Rifa'a. This hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so this is she came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إني نكحت عبد الرحمن بن الزبير فوالله ما معه إلا مثل هذه الهدبة. قالت فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لعلك تريدين أن ترجعي إلى رفاعة لا حتى يذوق عسيلتك وتذوقي عسيلته. Like you can't just marry him and go back. You have to taste him and he has to taste you. Like the Prophet said it nicely, like he didn't get explicit about it, right? Like as in you have to experience each other. Okay, you have to go through that and then you can go back. So the question becomes, but the Quran was, what did the Quran say? The Quran said فإن طلقها فلا تحل له من بعد حتى تنكح زوجا غيره. The Quran just said you have to marry someone else and then you can go back, right? It doesn't say anything about this part. This is coming from the hadith. Are you following the argument? The Quran was mutlaq, we're making it muqayyad. Right? So how do we answer this question? Like how are we adding something from the khabar and saying that the khabar is okay? Like, yeah, you have to go have the relations. So continue. Al-ijabatu عن السؤال الثاني.
الإجابة عن السؤال الثاني وأما قيد الدخول فقد قال البعض إن النكاح في النص حمل على الوطء إذ العقد مستفاد من لفظ الزوج وبهذا يزول السؤال.
Okay, so one answer is, there's 2 possible answers. وأما قيد الدخول فقد قال البعض. Some people say إن النكاح في النص حمل على الوطء. The word nikah in this verse فإن طلقها فلا تحل له من بعد حتى تنكح زوجا غيره. The word nikah doesn't mean marriage. The word nikah means sexual intercourse. How do we get that? Because it says فإن طلقها فلا تحل له من بعد حتى تنكح زوجا غيره, until she does nikah with another husband, a different husband. Well, the husband, when she says, when it says زوجا غيره, that's the nikah marriage part. She's already married to him. How is she going to marry him? No, she's going to have intercourse with him. That's what that means. Until she has relations with زوجا غيره. Okay? So Hanafis answer this question and say the word nikah originally actually means intercourse, and majazan it means marriage, and so here it means intercourse, and that we're getting this from the Quran. We're not getting this from hadith. You people get it from hadith. We get it straight from the Quran. Okay, that's the answer. Then another group says وقال البعض
وقال البعض قيد الدخول يثبت بالخبر وجعلوه من المشاهير فلا يلزمهم قيد الكتاب بخبر الواحد.
But some of them say قيد الدخول, the muqayyad that we're making it of having the relation is يثبت بالخبر. It's proven by the khabar. Yeah, it is hadith. Yeah, we agree it's hadith. وجعلوه من المشاهير. But this isn't خبر واحد. This is خبر مشهور. فلا يلزمهم قيد الكتاب بخبر الواحد. We're not taking خبر واحد and doing قيد of the Quran with it. We're taking something that's mashhur and doing قيد of the Quran with it. That's not a problem. Mashhur is not a problem. It's the wahid that was the problem. So we just solved the problem by calling this hadith mashhur. There's two ways to solve the problem. One is you say, oh no, it's tankiha doesn't mean marriage, it means relationship. The second one is we're not going to call it qabr wahid, we're going to call it mashhur.
So with the Ahnaf, you can, because it's not a qabr wahid, you can use a mashhur hadith.
So with the Ahnaf, it's interesting. What they say is you can't do takhsis of something aam in the Quran using khabar wahid, and you can't do taqyid of something that's mutlaq in the Quran using khabar wahid. But they say you can do it with mutawatir, and you can kind of do it with mashhur as well.
Okay.
So, like, generally speaking, anytime the Hanafis like find an issue like this one, they will often be like, well, that's a mashhur hadith. Now, how does one validate, is it really mashhur hadith? You can't. Because sometimes they'll call a hadith mashhur and we only have one chain of narration for it. You're like, wait, what do you mean it's mashhur? They'd be like, oh, it was mashhur at the time of Abu Hanifa. You're like, okay, how do we know that?
Mm-hmm.
It's an awkward situation because people of hadith aren't calling it mashhur, but the Hanafis are calling it mashhur. So there's really no way to prove it, disprove it, anything like that. It's kind of weird. Okay, so we'll end class here. We'll resume next time with I think the next chapter is mushtarak and mu'awwal. Okay, but we're done with mutlaq and muqayyad. Let's see, we should probably do an exam at some point. Have we done enough to do an exam right now? Midterm. You know, no, we should finish mushtarak and mu'awwal, then we'll do the exam, inshallah. Yeah, we'll do mushtarak and mu'awwal, then we'll have the exam. Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.
Alaikum salam.
And